Welcome, everybody. We are post our final scrimmage going into the season. We're going to have our very own Eric Nalin join us a little bit later. He is currently on the phone with the sources, but we wanted to kind of talk a little bit moving forward about week 0. We actually don't generally talk about that because we obviously start in week 1. So why would we talk about week 0, right? But there's actually some fun games on that slate that we were talking about. And we will, I promise you, get to all of that scrimmage news as soon as we get our Eric Nalin on here. But guys, the great nation of Ireland is going to be hosting a game. It looks like on the 24th, at Saturday the 24th, 12 p.m. Eastern, we will have Georgia Tech and Florida State, which is actually a little bit of an appealing matchup if you look at it. Florida State's obviously coming off a very disappointing season last year, wherein they were not invited to the playoff. Maybe this is a redemption year for them. We will see. Ed B. Ian is my favorite too. So don't you feel like you have to monopolize that. What are our thoughts going forward? What were you gonna say, Paul?
No baby. No Izzy.
Oh, that's right. Oh, she's there. Okay, fine.
She's chewing on an electrical cord on the ground while
just right off screen. Good. Just gnawing on some Cat 5 cable. Well, okay, so we've got Florida State coming up, Georgia Tech. What do we see this year? What does Florida State want to get out of this as we move into this season? Because it's a big one for them.
Probably just a win at this point in the season. I don't know if style points matter so much as just getting out of Ireland with a win.
When we talk about style points, when they're in these massive neutral site games, like it's just, obviously it's in a different country. There's a lot of travel logistics going to it. I mean, do style points even count in that context? Full stop.
I mean, it's a conference game.
Sure.
So that's the main thing. And then also style points probably may not matter. I think your way to the college football playoff if you're Florida State is to win the ACC.
Right.
So I'm not sure how many ACC or Big 12 teams are going to be counted on to make it, but I think the Big 10 and the SEC are going to bully in the at-large selection process. And I think the Big 12 and ACC will have trouble justifying, getting that second team from their conference. There she is. There's the star.
Okay. All right. I love this. This level of pandering is just phenomenal to me. The fact that you have the same haircut, I think, is not only adorable. It's just a really endearing way to, bond with your children. That's it's a nice touch.
This one hasn't had a haircut yet, but sure.
Okay, fine. We do have a question here, and it's more of a statement. And given who's on with us today, I think it might be appropriate to talk about this. So, again, Trey Moore is rumored to be putting up 400 pounds on the bench. And again, this is a question for you, Ian.
That's why you brought it up.
Can you just tell us, like, obviously, when you're going through the season? Obviously, having a 400-pound bench is certainly very impressive. It's coming off the edge and the D line. What kind of advantage would that give you if you were in that position?
Well, it would give me the advantage I normally would have because obviously I also bench 400.
Correct.
Paul will actually answer this better, but I think that mostly that just indicates raw power and twitchiness. Because he's not an enormous guy, Trey Moore. And so for him to put up particularly big numbers in any kind of weightlifting set, Paul, am I right? That speaks to power.
It could. I mean, power is a display of strength over time, right? Short time. So anyone can develop strength. And what strength really does is probably it's his ability to anchor. He's also obviously got a strong upper body. So when he's batting down a tackle's arms, it's a lot different.
But he's not even if you train really hard, not just anybody can get to 400 though, right? That you have to have some level of natural power.
It depends on your definition of anybody. I mean, if you take a fit high school football player and you train them for 3 years, he can bench 400 pounds just off of, sheer doggedness and doing it and sticking with it. But I think the main thing is he's a good athlete and he's strong. I mean, that's the takeaway, right? The fear with Trey Moore was that he was a finesse player. He was just a guy that, has some moves and got a spin move, and he takes gaps and he runs around these bigger, slower footed guys. But this might suggest that he's got the ability to anchor. He's got the ability to bat down someone's arms, when they're trying to get into his mix. And it's just generally strength is never a weakness. You always want your players to be stronger rather than weaker. And, he's a good example that strength is attainable, even for, 240-pound edges, not just the Baron Sorrells who weigh 260.
Well, we've talked about this.
Sorry, it probably also helps on any kind of counter and trap plays where he's got to collide with somebody and engage a blocker. It helps to be strong in the upper body in those instances. Not as good as the lower body, but still helpful.
You typically anchor with your lower body in those instances, right? But then your upper body is like how you lock a guy out, right? Yeah. And claim space. And so, bench is interesting. It's simultaneously the most overrated and most underrated sort of the big lifts, right? So it's always interesting. It can be controversial for some people, but I can assure you, if someone benches 400, it feels very different than if someone benches 250 if you go against them.
Is there a particular, when we're looking at those positions, obviously somebody on the edge, is there a model or a metric that you're looking for? Like, look, I'd really like these guys to have X amount. Presumably that's going to be primarily lower body, right? Primarily lower body based metrics.
Yeah. I mean, it's strength in totality, but lower body is typically more important. You're also looking at height, weight, arm length. How fast are you? How quick are you? What's your shuttle? What's your broad jump? What's your vertical? All that kind of stuff. Ultimately, that's all subservient to film. Like, what do you actually do on the football field? So, because a lot of those things can be modified. A lot of those things can improve. Strength training, if you're a decent athlete, will improve anyone, and it's attainable for anyone, right? Tom Brady transformed his body. Aaron Rodgers, if you go look at old clips when he was getting passed up in the draft and he's sitting there in the green room or whatever, that's a 208-pound, six-pack Aaron Rodgers coming out of Cal. And you see him 3 years later in Green Bay, he's 230 and built, like really built, and strong lower body. And suddenly his arm strength went from above average in college to having one of the best arms in the NFL, probably one of the best arms ever. So, strength matters.
This is something that we've kind of talked about in the past, and I think it's as we get closer to the season. I want to restructure this question a little bit because I don't like talking about, obviously players getting hurt. There's Eric. We'll bring him on in a second, but I want to talk about this idea of, obviously we've got a very deep quarterback room, and what do you think the chances are? What would you put the over under on games that we're going to see Arch this year? Not for injury's sake, but because we're doing really well and we want to get him some reps. How many games do you think we'll see him in this year? Kind of start with you, Ian.
Boy, I would say at least like 6.
Okay.
I mean, they need to be comfortably ahead to get him involved.
Right.
So you kind of need to go through the schedule and see which games are likely to have sure thing outcomes when there's only 1 or 2 possessions left in the game. But I think they're going to want to work him in as much as possible. I think it is not unlikely that Quinn would miss a game or 2. Hopefully he's better this year at keeping himself on the field. But I would think as many, because I mean, there's no red shirt to worry about anymore.
Right.
So, yeah.
Any thoughts on that, Paul?
6 or 7.
6 or 7. All right. Well, look, the man of the hour is here. Everybody wants to talk to Eric. Eric was kind enough to give me a little bit of a preface before he came on. We're still gathering some information. So, admittedly, what we're going to be able to provide you here today is obviously insightful, but is going to be a little bit tempered because at Inside Texas, we like to be very confident and sure in what we're reporting. And let's just start with what we can talk about, Eric. And I think the big news, this is the big news. I don't think I'm revealing any spoilers here, but it's really important news, is this was an injury-free scrimmage.
Yeah, no injuries. That was the main piece of information I received. For people asking about the scrimmage, it ended about an hour ago. So it takes a while. Sometimes it takes a while for news to filter out about it. But the little pieces I've gathered, the offense played a lot better than it did the week before. And overall, the scrimmage, as you'd expect, as you get closer to the season and further into August, overall the scrimmage was a lot cleaner. At the same time, we did hear that the secondary looked pretty dang good. But we're going to have a lot more information on that. There's not a whole lot to share yet. Like I said, the scrimmage just ended, and you need time for the accurate information to filter out.
With the just in terms of program trajectory in general, going into this, what would you say the sentiment was around the building going into this scrimmage? Everybody feeling as confident as the public and the fans are?
Yeah, there's a lot of confidence. So we wrote the other day, the goal is to win the national championship. Last year was to win the Big 12. This year they've elevated. They think the program is trending in the right direction. They've got they still got a lot to prove. They've got a lot to accomplish between now and the end of the season. The team has to continue coming together. Hopefully they catch some good luck. They have to be focused week to week. That's a huge part of it. I think they feel like they could have played a couple games last year better, and they have to figure out what went wrong in the prep ahead of OU and Michigan. So there's still plenty of questions, but there is a lot of excitement and plenty of confidence for sure. A lot of depth. But they're definitely planning for this to be a long season. You're going to see longer rotations earlier in the year. A lot of guys. You're going to see a lot of players play during non-conference, a whole lot, excluding Michigan. That's going to be a game that you play to win, play all your starters. But expect to play a lot of guys. I heard a lot of players were rotating today with the expectation that they're going to be playing into January again next year. And you kind of have to pace yourself to some degree, which it gets a little tricky because you can't really pace yourself in football. If you come out and get caught slipping, you're going to be in a battle in the fourth quarter, and then your margin for error disappears. So there's still plenty of stuff for this team to prove, but they're very confident in where they're at right now.
Because I know that sometimes we get caught up in this zero-sum game. We say the defense is doing well, the offense is doing well, but the people that we're talking to here obviously have a very good sense of objectivity and what is good and what is not. So if they're saying that the secondary is good, that would lead me to believe that also the offense is executing at a certain level wherein the secondary is being tested and asked to be good. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I mean they're trading shots back and forth. Good players are going to make good plays, and so one play the defensive back might make a great play, and the next play a wide receiver is going to get him, or Quinn's going to throw a pinpoint pass that only the wide receiver can catch, even though the defensive back is in good position. But yeah, there's a lot of excitement about the cornerbacks. Janae Barron. There was a lot of guys on a pitch count today. I'm not even sure, based on Friday practice, I'm not even sure a couple guys even participated. I've got to get more confirmation on that later today. So there was, they are being a little bit cautious with the bad luck they've had. But there is a lot of back and forth, trading plays. And it's kind of like what you heard about back when it was GBU and Texas was really humming on both sides of the ball. So there's not really dominating play. The defense has been better thus far. But based on the limited information I've heard, the offense did have a good day today. And that means the wide receivers had to play well and the quarterbacks played better.
So, I mean, with that, again, we're getting a limited view here because we want to get as many sources in on this as we can. But did you hear any names in particular that might have stood out even early on?
Jelani McDonald, I heard, had a good day, but that's about it. Yeah, we'll get a lot more. Like I said, it takes a little time for information to filter out.
Yep. Well, if you kind of wrote about this a little bit on the board here, but and this may have been an article by Cookie, but in this particular setting, this is our last scrimmage. We're going into this. Obviously, we want to start establishing that rotation, getting second team, getting third team, getting a whole bunch of reps in there. And this is a question for you, Paul. As as a coach, as a team, what are we really, really looking for here in that final scrimmage before? Because we've got another week of spring ball, and then we go into game prep, and it's showtime.
You're trying to cement the depth chart typically in the second team. You're also trying to probably simulate. I mean, I'm not privy to what happened in the scrimmage, but you're probably trying to simulate game situations. Hey, it's 37 seconds on the clock. We don't have a timeout. We're going to run a play and then run the field goal team on, stuff like that. Hey, Quinn, it's 4th and 4. We're on the 50. We're down 4 points. What are your options here?
Right.
Just how is that different from 3rd and 4? 4th and 4, you have to try. 3rd and 4, you can throw it out of bounds, right, and live for another day. 4th and 4, you have to try to complete the football. Stuff like that. So, I think a lot of it's probably game situation. I think a lot of it's probably trying to figure out. Again, we try to look at depth charts linearly. When you look at it, you pull up the depth chart, you go, oh, this guy backs up this guy. It's really not the truth, right? We know that Cole Hudson is probably the backup at both guard spots. We know Cole Hudson might be the primary backup at center as well, right?
It's Army knife, that kid. Yeah.
So, yeah. And then who's the third tackle? Is the guy that's behind Cam Williams on the depth chart the guy behind Cam Williams if Cam has to go out for a couple of plays? Probably not. It's probably, someone who's going to be playing both tackle spots as the third swing tackle. So, but then you have to figure out, can he do that? Some tackles can't play both sides. They can't go, it's interesting. Some guys, they can't do their drop steps on the opposite side. They're just so left or right dominant that they're not able to make that adjustment. So, and to include some good NFL tackles can't do that. So yeah, you're trying to do a lot of refinement, and you're trying to figure out not only who's actually going to go in the game beyond the depth chart, but you're also trying to figure out who's second team, who's third team. Hey, we're looking at some reps here. Do we want to try to get this guy, make sure we just he's a red shirt, let's not play him in more than 4 games. Or do we want to say, hey, there's some guys we probably want to speed up their time at the University of Texas, and let's make sure that they don't redshirt because we want to get the conveyor belt going. And so I think a lot of it was probably game situation. I don't even know. Did they run goal line? Did they run 2-minute drills?
I'm sure they kind of run goal line every practice. Last week we know they worked on 3rd and 7 a lot, passing situation most often, but they work situations pretty much every practice. I'd imagine that today was no different. Probably plenty of red zone. We'll find out for sure, but I would bet a lot of money they did red zone today.
I have 2 questions for you, Eric. One is the obligatory super chat. How's Jonte doing? And then I want to ask you about the implementation of these headsets. Well, let's start with Jonte.
Yeah, Jonte's having a good camp. Jonte's going to play a lot. I think Jonte's going to play himself into more playing time throughout the season, and then it's just kind of up to him. It's up to all those wide receivers, really, because it's, you're going to have – I could see any one of those guys leading the team in receiving yards or touchdowns on any given day, on any given game. They're just all that talented. So I'm curious to see who emerges as the de facto number 1, the go-to guy like they had last year with Adonai. When they really had to have it, they went to him. Nobody has yet emerged as that guy. I'm curious to see if that happens. But Jonte is going to play a ton. I think he's going to play himself in even more playing time as the season goes on. We were talking about, as Paul was alluding to, the idea of starting to get into game reps, going through the rotation. One of the new elements this year is obviously the communication through the headsets. And I'm just curious, as we're getting toward the end of spring camp. Have you heard anything in terms of, I know, Ian, you've written about the advantage that this might pose for a Sark-led offense with an experienced quarterback. But we'll start with you, Eric. Is there anything in particular that you may have heard through sources on how that's going, is certainly on the offensive side and the defensive side of the ball? Not specifically, no. And that would probably be something to get an idea of from the scrimmage. That they feel like they're going to have to be figuring out the strategy behind that into the season. When to go fast, when to slow down, when it's more useful and when it's not. We know that they're still signaling a lot because they're not always going to be able to get the signal in. There's going to be times where you still have to go with the signals, especially on defense when the offense is going fast. So it's still a work in progress, but I expect Anthony Hill to have it on defense, and we all know, obviously it'll be Quinn on offense.
With that a little bit, because I want to push people a little bit to this article that you wrote, Ian, because I think this is a really great way of looking at it. But what are the advantages for someone like Sark with an experienced quarterback and a headset?
The more information that your quarterback can handle and the more information that an offensive coordinator is capable of delivering succinctly, the more advantage you get from helmet communications, right? So if you're a really simple offense that just wants to go fast and catch people, it's probably not a very big advantage to have the helmet communications. You still have to signal to all the players. They still have to look to the sideline. You're still kind of taking it out of the hands of the quarterback. If you're a team that wants to huddle and have some options and run the best possible play every time, it's a huge advantage because you can just signal into the quarterback. He tells everybody in the huddle 1 unless 2, right? And then he goes to the line, and then he can do the Peyton Manning Omaha thing to choose 1 or 2 and then go. And you can't steal signs if the offense is operating like that. Or if you're an up-tempo team that is really good at signaling in lots of options and your quarterback can make decisions and cycle through them, then you're at an advantage. It just it really depends on what you're used to coaching and what your players can handle. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I think the word you use that is really important is succinct. You can over talk and over direct. God help any Jimbo Fisher quarterback who would have been around during the helmet communications, right? He's going to freaking read a freaking paragraph to that guy as he's walking up the line and actually rob that guy of his athleticism and his instincts, right? And try to mechanize everything he does. So I think I had an interesting conversation with someone who was a pilot, a Marine pilot, who used to land on aircraft carriers. And the guy talking down, particularly at night, which is really scary because we're out on the ocean and the deck is pitching. That deck is rising and falling 30 feet with every sway of the ocean. So if you mistime it on your landing, it's going to be a bad day, not just for you, but for everyone on that deck when jet fuel on fire goes flying everywhere and sets everything ablaze. And so you have a guy who's a fellow pilot who's talking you down, particularly at night. And one of the things they agree to is succinct communication. They only have 4 or 5 words that they say to each other, and they communicate what you need to be doing, not just with those words, but also with their tone. And so what you don't want is some pilot saying, oh, easy, oh, deck's coming, oh, easy. You want him to go back, good. That's all you want to hear as the pilot, right? Or ease it up. And then, and if you have to pull up, the guy will just say in a nice, even tone, pull it up. They don't, pull it up. You're going to kill everyone. So I think offensive coordinators are going to have to be careful about that. So I think the best thing you can do for Quinn Ewers is you make the call. You're going to be in an empty set on this play, right? Once you have Jaden Blue go out and the tight end goes out and you're now in a 5 wide and you know that this triggers an auto nickel blitz from this defense half the time. As he's walking up, it's useful for Sark to say, remember the nickel. Like, that's on you. That extra man's on you. Don't go into this whole, Jaden's going to be open underneath, but if he's not, then, I think they're smart enough to not overcoach. And so I think you have to have really precise and really concise prompts for everything. And then on defense, I think we're going to still end up signaling most of the time. I think there will be some communication, certainly, but I think we're going to be signaling all the time because a lot of times your front is getting a signal too about what they should be doing. Because if a team sugar huddles or they go no huddle, right? Even at the line of scrimmage, they could take their full 30 seconds. They all turn and face the sideline like we're all used to seeing. Your guys can't get out of their stance. They can't all go huddle and wait for instruction. So your defensive line, they all turn and look at the signal. And do you have like a bullfrog playing chess or whatever the hell that means? And that they know that they've got a signal. So I still think on defense you're going to be signaling most of the time.
If you're looking for a signal to purchase a new home in the Central Texas area, we suggest you check out young Laura Baker. Young Laura Baker is a UT grad. She's an avid Longhorn fan and a member of IT. She's a member of the elite Andy Allen team with Keller Williams. So please give her a call. She's been very supportive of us, and we very much appreciate her. Her number is 512-784-0505. Again, that number is 512-784-0505. Guys, there's a question. I'm going to throw this to our friend Ian, just because this seems to be I find this to be a hobby of his, something he really likes to look into and think about. And those are the people north of the Red River. How do you, even if you don't know, I would just love some random speculation on how well you think they're doing up there during their camp.
Well, I like to read the Sooner Scoop.
Sure.
They have reports and sources. I also sometimes like to listen to the Oklahoma Breakdown with Teddy Lehman and Gabe Eichert. Pretty good show. And it does not sound that great. I wrote about it on Inside Texas this morning. I wrote about some of the fall camp reports out of Michigan and Oklahoma. Michigan, I'm actually a little more nervous about this season in that game because they may actually use an actual quarterback instead of a second running back as their quarterback. Oklahoma, they're having mega problems with the zero-sum game where it's like, is our defense like all-time historic great? Or is it just good and our offense is terrible? Because their offense is getting very little traction by their own reporting. Sometimes I relay what their own reporting is, and then the Oklahoma guys say, I just made it up. And I'm just repeating what your own people are saying. They're saying the offensive line cannot protect, and Jackson Arnold threw interceptions. I'm sorry. But they also they're replacing like everybody. Like I went over it in the article. All 5 linemen are gone. Starting tight end and running back are gone. Starting quarterback is gone. Number 1 receiver is gone. One of their up and coming receivers is lost for the year. Some of their other receivers have been injured in fall camp. When they'll probably be okay by the time they play Texas. But it just makes for a total cluster that's been apparently ravaged by their defense. And only a Grinch would not smile reading some of their reactions.
This is coming from our patron saint, Brett Nelson, with a super chat, who is asking, and this is a pretty good article subject, but what are the top 3 most important talented players on each side of the ball? We'll just go around the room really quickly. We'll start with you, Paul. Let's start with the offense. We'll all go through the offense. So top 3 players on the offensive side of the ball. I'll
most
let you
talented?
go ahead. Yeah, and most talented. That's the caveat Brett threw in.
Okay. Well,
he said not talented. Most important.
Did he? Okay.
It's right there. It's right there. You can see it.
Sorry. Thank you for that, Eric.
Oh,
yes, I misread it, and
okay.
I did it right in front of me. Which
all right. Well, our most important player. Our most important player is also our most talented on offense, and that's Kelvin Banks, left tackle. Quinn Ewers is very important, also talented. And then I'd probably say this could be debated by some, I think.
No.
But I'll go Jake Majors.
No. Jaden Blue. They're so thin at running back.
Yeah. I was forgetting.
Running back.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
Any other deviation you have there, Eric, outside of who are you replacing Paul's list with Jaden Blue?
I mean, if you could argue, you could quibble between Ewers and Arch. I think if you're really trying to do it, you don't want to lose Ewers, obviously, but I'm not sure that the drop off is what it normally is when you lose your starting quarterback to your second teamer. No, it's got to be Blue just because of depth issues and Kelvin Banks. Yeah, you don't want to have to reshuffle the offensive line or play somebody that hasn't played before. Maybe Trevor Gooseby would be the guy. I'm not even sure who the third tackle is at this point. Honestly, I'm not sure it's been settled yet, behind the scenes. But I like that. There's so many good wide receivers. You don't want to lose any of them. But the fact that you have so many of them means that, it wouldn't be the end of the world.
Ian, any differences for you?
Well, I'll say that if a receiver emerges that Quinn trusts on third down or the goal line, then that's going to be maybe the most indispensable guy. And the fact that they don't have one yet actually is starting to make me a little bit nervous. I do want to see at some point somebody emerge who's like, this guy's probably going to be drafted. He'll be a go-to guy. He's reliable. If they for the whole season they have a million talented options, but they don't have that guy, that I don't think that is going to do it. So if they find that guy, then that guy, Jaden Blue, I think, and then probably Banks. I agree.
Steven is throwing out just in terms of defense. He's got Hill, Moore, and Muhammad. Nope. Okay, good. We've got some disagreement there from Eric. What are you replacing that with?
You got 66, which is still not good. 66% right. You got to go Hill and Muhammad for sure. I'm going Alfred Collins in the middle. He's got the most upside to be a difference maker in the interior that they have, and I do think he's going to have a very good season. So if you're going by past last year and you looked at more what he did at ETSA and you're like, Alfred Collins hasn't really materialized yet, I get that, but this is a looking forward game. We're talking about this season, and I think it's got to be Alfred Collins as one of the three most important on defense.
Paul?
Yeah, I agree. Because we also have depth at edge. I think Moore's going to have a great impact, but part of his impact will be because Hill and Alfred Collins are getting flushes from the interior. And when you can flush a quarterback off the spot, that's where Trey Moore really comes in. He runs guys down. And we haven't had that guy in a while. But if he were to get dinged or have to miss something for a while, we've got plenty of other edges who can do stuff. Alfred Collins, we've got other defensive tackles. There is depth in the room, but none of them can do what Alfred can do.
Any thoughts on that, Ian, in terms of just consistency?
Hopefully Collins is the right answer.
Well, you wrote about this not too long ago, and I think you and I debated via text. You had Jahdae Barron in there, right?
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. I would put Barron in over Muhammad. I think Muhammad may be that guy. If Barron plays corner, then I think he will be. Barron could also play like all three positions in the secondary. So an elite corner is more important than a Swiss Army knife, but I think Barron at least has to be considered.
Interesting that we all agree on Hill, though. That's the hill that we'll die on.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, there we go.
All right.
And what a great place to end this. Quick little scrimmage update. Unfortunately, we didn't have entirely the depth of information that we normally have, but that is coming to you. So please stay tuned. Go ahead and subscribe, like, and hit that little bell, because I promise you, especially during these next few weeks, we will be having videos popping up when the information becomes available to us. And we really do appreciate you taking the time and being with us today. Check out InsideTexas.com for all of the information that you might need with this. And with that, yeah, we've got a little fifth member here, and that's super adorable and fun.